pernah habis dunia, sampai ke ujung batasnya, takkan berhenti hingga hatimu membeku. Kembali berputar arah, pulang padaku.
Saat gagasan pendirian Sarinah dicetuskan pada tahun 1962, Bung Karno ingin banyak membuat mercusuar kebangkitan bangsa Indonesia. Sarinah adalah bentuk perwujudan dari kebangkitan ekonomi kerakyatan menuju modernisasi dan internasionalisme. Dari masa ke masa, Sarinah menjadi saksi dari perkembangan Indonesia. Sarinah melihat bagaimana masyarakat bertumbuh dan beradaptasi melalui segala tantangan yang hadir. Sarinah terus menjadi sentra aktivitas bagi masyarakat untuk memasarkan inovasi dan produk dalam negeri di jantung ibu kota. Transformasi Sarinah adalah sebuah momen yang dinanti-nantikan masyarakat Indonesia. Sebuah pusat perbelanjaan yang didesain untuk memberikan ruang bagi produk dalam negeri yang telah dikurasi. Pemugaran gedungnya tetap menjaga kelestarian aspek cagar budayanya, namun interior, fasilitas, dan pengalaman berbelanja akan disesuaikan dengan perilaku konsumen masa kini dan masa depan. Sarinah diharapkan menjadi destinasi wajib kunjung bagi wisatawan dalam dan luar negeri. Ruang rumah Sarinah terbagi menjadi 8 buah segmen lantai. Masing-masing ruang tersebut kami beri nama antara lain Pasar Nusantara, Pusaka, Untayan, Kreasi, Hayat, House of Sarinah, Cakrawala, dan Tanah Nusa. Melalui konsep community mall, Sarinah memberikan ruang publik yang memiliki elemen historical, urban linkages, urban forest, serta urban living. Kami ingin mengajak Anda untuk menjadi bagian dari semangat baru Sarinah. Semangat yang diwariskan oleh para pendiri bangsa untuk bisa menjadikan Indonesia menjadi salah satu sentral ekonomi dunia. Bersama, mari kita tunjukkan kekayaan karya Nusantara kepada dunia. Sarinah, panggung karya Indonesia.
Hi, welcome to Sarinah Jakarta Content Week 2021, sponsored by Brimo.
Hi everyone, welcome to LitBite, the culinary arm part of Jakarta Content Week 2021, organized by the 17.000 Pulau Imaji Foundation and the Frankfurter Buchmesse. We hope that you are safe and well. Our 2021 theme is To Gather Again, and explores how to gather a creative community to collaborate, connect, and thrive during this COVID era. Over 5 days, LitBite brings together a bold mix of writers, publishers, artists, chefs, academics, activists, and creative minds in a feast of words, ideas, and innovation. My name is Melati, a chocolate enthusiast and chocolate matchmaker based in Jakarta. The title of this event is Hot Chocolate. I am joined here with 3 fabulous speakers. Our first speaker is Chantal Coady, OBE, a British chocolatier, author, and businesswoman born in Tehran, Iran. She has lived and worked in London since the mid-1970s and graduated with a BA degree in design from the University of Arts, London. Founder of Rococo Chocolates in 1983, Coady was made OBE, or Officer of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, in the Queen's Birthday Honours List of June 2014 for services to chocolate making. Following her departure from Rococo Chocolates, Chantal has founded another venture trading as the Chocolate Detective, focused on sourcing chocolate that is human-centric and adds value at the start of the chain. And this is very much the focus of her organic cocoa farm in Grenada. Chantal has been appointed co-chair of the Academy of Chocolate. Chantal joins us from London today. Good afternoon, Chantal.
Good afternoon. Lovely to be here.
Okay, our second speaker is likely the first professional chocolate critic in the world. Clay Gordon is the author of the book Discover Chocolate, who has since 2008 moderated the global online community, The Chocolate Life, and is known as a communicator and educator on all things cocoa and chocolate. He is also a fan of Indonesian and Balinese cocoa. Clay joins us from New York today. Good morning, Clay.
Good morning, and thank you very, very much, Melati. It is a real pleasure to be here as a part of this panel and this entire week's worth of presentations for a very, very good purpose of bringing people together.
Thank you, Clay. Now, our third speaker is Tissa Aunilla. Tissa founded Pipiltin Cocoa with her brother Irfan Helmi. She started the company to introduce Indonesians to single origin premium chocolates and is committed to sustainable practices and sourcing cocoa ethically from smallholder farmers in Bali, Aceh, Flores, East Java, and West Papua. Tissa took a master chocolatier program in Switzerland, and was selected as one of ASEAN Young Business Leaders Initiative members, a program managed by Asia New Zealand Foundation on behalf of the New Zealand's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Prior to founding Pipiltin, Tissa was a corporate lawyer. Joining us from Jakarta, welcome, Mbak Tissa.
Hello, Mbak Melati. Hello, everyone. Lovely to be here and look forward for discussion.
Thank you. Now, before we start our conversation, I'd like to provide us all a bit of background context to the Indonesian cocoa sector and trending interest from the younger Indonesian generations for agriculture in general. Indonesia's agricultural sector currently employs 2.7 million farmers below the age of 40, or approximately 8% of the total farming population. Now, in the past decade, the Indonesian cocoa sector has faced declining productivity and losing interest from its current and future farmers. The majority of farmers do not wish their children to continue farming, while the younger generations tend to look into urban jobs. Meanwhile, an increasing number of local governments and farming communities across Indonesia have started to develop their local cocoa potential by investing in micro chocolate factories, producing better quality beans and chocolate products. Additionally, it's important to note that Indonesia's 100 million millennials who are aged between 20 to 40 years old, or approximately 40% of the total population, have increasingly looked to develop future careers and business opportunities, a part of which could be potentially channeled in developing the cocoa and chocolate sector. So let us now start the conversation. Chantal, you have had extensive experience working together with cocoa farmers in Grenada. to add value at origin by developing the tree-to-bar business model. Now, before we hear more about this from Chantal, let's have a look first at this short video.
There you go.
Chantal, the tree-to-bar business model may sound quite unfamiliar to our Indonesian viewers. So can you tell us a bit more about this initiative, whether there is strong market demand for such products, and are there additional price incentives for farmers to be involved?
Thank you very much, Melati, for inviting me to discuss these fantastic challenges which we find ourselves being faced with. I think it's true to say that the tree-to-bar model is not brand new. It's been going on for 20 years or so. And the company that I've been working with in Grenada, as opposed to Grenada in Spain, in the Caribbean, this has been revolutionary because they started a different conversation. They actually tipped the whole business model on its head. So traditionally, we know that practically all cocoa and chocolate has started on a base of colonialism and slavery. And what we want to do is to get everyone looking at where they're sourcing their chocolate from. And if they can understand that by going directly to the communities where they're actually growing the cocoa and supporting them to make chocolate there, or at least to do some of the processing there, they're going to absolutely change the dynamic of cocoa farming and chocolate making.
Thanks, Chantal. Now, I'd like to move to Clay for now. So Clay, we found a video of your interview from a decade ago in which you provided your personal prediction of what would be the future of fine chocolates. Now, let's play this video for our viewers first, and then we'd like to hear more from you regarding fine chocolates now and in the future.
One of the places where we're going is that far more small manufacturers are directly sourcing the beans. The other trend we're going to see, which I think is equally important, is a lot more manufacturing in the country of origin. Mm-hmm. So, for example, with Ama, I mean, it's one of the partners, Diego, is the owner of 3 cacao farms, and the factory is in Bahia. Right? Yeah. We're looking at the Crespo family in Ecuador. They're looking at producing a large quantity of chocolate for the world market, not for consumption in Ecuador, but for the world market in Ecuador. We're looking at there are producers here from Mexico, and they're making chocolate in Mexico for distribution on the world market. And so, so the important thing here is that when we think about gourmet foods, wine, scotch, cheese, and foods for which there are denominazione or appellation controls, where the food is made is within a few kilometers of where the ingredient is grown. Yep. And with chocolate, the cacao is normally grown thousands of kilometers from where the chocolate is made. And so making the connection back to the source, so that where the chocolate is made is very, very close to where the cacao is grown, is very, very important for everyone. It keeps more money in the country of origin. The farmers make more, but also I think that there's an opportunity for perhaps a more authentic taste.
So Clay, in the interview, which took place 11 years ago, and you look quite different then, you predicted that fine chocolates would go in the direction of chocolates increasingly being manufactured within cocoa producing origins and companies increasingly engaging in direct sourcing with farmers. Now, do you consider your prediction to become a reality nowadays? And what future predictions do you have for the future of fine chocolates, especially related to big issues such as climate change and farmer living income?
Well, one of the things that I would say is that, like many things in the world of cocoa and chocolate, the answer is it depends. And so there are many ways in which we can see, yes, the absolute number of companies that are making chocolate, either directly sourcing cocoa beans from origin or manufacturing chocolate at origin, has grown explosively since that interview was done. We've gone from maybe a few hundred around the world to several thousands around the world. I mean, that has been just a huge explosion. And for many of the companies that are involved in this effort, it has been transformative economically, not only for the companies, but for the farms from which they are purchasing their cocoa beans. But what has happened at the same time is that the global markets for chocolate have also expanded. And so the percentage of the market, which is represented by these small chocolate makers buying beans from origin or small chocolate makers at origin, the percentage of the market represented by these companies hasn't grown at the same rate as the numbers of makers. And so we see increases in volume, we see increases in income. Whether or not we see increases in quality is to some extent very, very subjective. But as somebody who's been looking at this for over a decade, I mean, the increase in just the overall quality of product that is being made at origin, chocolate, especially chocolate that begins to tie to local food cultures. So, you know, I'm at origin, I'm not necessarily making European style chocolate, but what I'm doing is I'm using chocolate as a vehicle for expressing aspects of my local culture that is important to me. I think that that's where we're starting to see a lot more traction. And when I was talking about quality in that video and more authentic flavors, that's what I would say is what I'm seeing has been a very important through line or trend over the last 5 years and more, and where I think the future for success is going to be. Not to imitate the chocolate that the United States makes, or not to imitate the chocolate that is made in Europe, but to be able to use chocolate made from cocoa beans, which are grown near where it is that I am, and then to be able to take aspects of musical culture and artistic culture and food culture and be able to create craft experiences from them that speak to people around the world.
Thanks, Clay. And how would you say the future of fine chocolate would relate to climate change and farmer living income, as I mentioned earlier?
Well, when we look at the number of farmers that are involved, when we think of the quote unquote fine chocolate world, what we're talking about is we're talking about a relatively small number of farmers. And when we look at the amount of cocoa that they produce, that's a relatively small amount of cocoa. So, you know, it's less than 1% of the world's cocoa, and it's fewer than 1% of the world's cocoa farmers. And so in terms of direct impact, when it comes to things like climate change, I don't know actually how effective it will be. But what we do know is that what we in the industry call big chocolate, you know, the top 10 companies that dominate more than 80% of the global market, what they're doing is they're paying very, very close attention to the kinds of language that small chocolate or specialty chocolate, rather than fine chocolate, specialty chocolate, the language that is being used, the ethics of the producers, what the profiles are of the consumers, So, big chocolate is really, really paying attention to what specialty chocolate is doing. And I think that the influence is going to be, how can we provide a role model? How can we provide proof that it can be done, right? And that there are positive benefits and values in doing so. And that's the way that specialty chocolate is going to have an influence on things like climate change, by influencing the big chocolate companies who have the scale. They're the ones who are making impact. They're the ones who have the ability to, if they were to change their processes, to be able to make a change, right? But if I'm working with, 10 farmers on 10 hectares of land, right, and I get them to go from a more biodiverse agroforestry form of agriculture, that 10 hectares is a very, very small spot on the map. Right? And while it benefits the people who are involved in terms of making an impact on a global scale, it's much more challenging.
Thank you, Clay. So now I'd like to turn to Mbak Tissa, whom through her chocolate business, Pipiltin Cocoa, she has already worked to unearth various single origin chocolate bars from all corners of Indonesia. Now, first, let's have a quick look at this video, which features Pipiltin's most recent single origin chocolate bar from West Papua.
Meet the Vogelkop superb bird of paradise. The bird was discovered last year in West Papua's Arfak Mountains. Located in eastern Indonesia, West Papua is known as the Conservation Province.
Ya, nama saya Provina Waran, tinggalnya di Kampung Abreso. Saya seorang petani coklat. Yang kami hidupi anak-anak kami adalah coklat ini sudah.
Alasan kami memilih coklat dari Ransiki karena kita menolong petani di sana dan membantu untuk melestarikan hutan lindung. Di satu sisi lagi, nilai tambahnya adalah rasa yang sangat unik dari coklat Ransiki ini.
Mbak Tissa, that was a very beautiful video. From your experience, Mbak, working with various cocoa origins in Indonesia, from Aceh to West Papua, what opportunities do you see are available for potential and upcoming cocoa farmer communities and businesses across the country?
Thank you, Mbak Melati. This is a very good and relevant question to our challenges today in Indonesia related to chocolate business. So as we know, there are two types of chocolate in the market. The first one being chocolate produced with unfermented cocoa beans, mostly milk and white chocolate. And the other one is chocolate produced with fermented cocoa beans. So the distinctive flavor of the single origin chocolate comes from fermented cocoa beans. For example, in Pipiltin, we have Bali chocolate, Aceh, and West Papua. Those chocolate have different flavors. For example, Bali chocolate tastes more fruity and creamy. Aceh chocolate is more bold and have intense flavor. And West Papua more like has umami taste and creamy notes. So those flavors won't come up if we don't ferment the cocoa beans. So the biggest opportunity right now, I think for us is for cocoa farmers to produce fermented cocoa beans. Because since Indonesia is flooded with smallholders farmers, for example, compared to Africa, producing fermented cocoa beans becomes more and more feasible as they will have an increase in margin about 40 to 50%. So assuming they can produce 6 tons a year per family, because approximately families here own like less than 2 hectares. Farmers' income increase per family is about 96 million rupiahs a year. It's only the increase, it's not the whole income. So if the farmers sell fermented cocoa beans, there's more and more margin to them. So if we're talking about margin, the farmers will have more motivation to continue farming and not changing the cocoa plantation here in Indonesia into another plantation which are not suitable to the area. No, Melati.
Thank you, Mbak Tissa. A lot of opportunity, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, I'd like to go back to Clay. Clay, from what you've personally seen and experienced with Indonesian cocoa and chocolates, what treasures related to identity, history, local spices do you think can be unearthed to the world?
Well, I think that I hinted at this a few minutes ago, which is that most of the world doesn't understand what Indonesia means when it comes to cocoa. I mean, as a professional, I understand that it's one of the largest producing areas in the world, but it is an archipelago. It consists of hundreds of, if not thousands of islands, each of which has an individual geographical identity, so that there are aspects of what the French would call terroir, which are going to have an influence on the flavor of the product. And as Tissa said, when you get into fermentation, then you can more directly influence the flavor of the cocoa from which the chocolate is going to be made. And so there's a lot of single origin chocolate in the world, which means I can identify where the beans come from. And that could be a single farm, it could be a single region, it could be a single country. The challenge with a smallholder farmer becoming an international business person, right, as you might imagine, are quite great. Not only do they have to understand about how to produce cocoa, but they also have to understand how to manufacture chocolate and then be able to manufacture and export it. And so, Indonesia is not a country, as I'm aware of, that has a huge internal culture of consuming large quantities of chocolate. My understanding it's mostly been producing for export. And so that means that we don't have hundreds of years of history of culture of consuming what we would think of as fine chocolate or specialty chocolate in Indonesia. And so the great opportunity that people are facing, people like Tissa and Pipiltin are facing, the opportunity that they have is they get to create this culture. So they'd be able to find the things which not only Indonesians, but people within the region more generally, and that within the rest of the world find these things that people are connecting to, and then be able to create products which speak to those kinds of things. And so, what are, unique bits of food culture that we can connect to, spices, which are very, very common to Indonesians, which might be unusual to others, ways of consuming. How is Indonesia different, for example, from, Malaysia next door? And to be able to play with those kinds of ideas represent a real interesting opportunity. Unfortunately, although I consume on a regular basis a chocolate which is made from primarily Balinese cocoa beans, although also from other areas of the country, I've never had an opportunity to visit and personally experience. And so one of the things that I've learned is that I need to be very, very careful about the connections that I make and the generalizations that I make between different countries when I don't actually have the personal experience of being there. So from somebody who is many, many thousands of kilometers away, what I would say is look around you. Look at what else is growing, what you're near. Look at the musical culture. Look at the food culture. Look at the art. Understand the way the rest of the world perceives that. Right? And this becomes the foundation for the creative exploration, both from a taste perspective, but from how I'm going to visually represent what it is that I'm trying to do.
Fascinating. Clay, I think Chantal, connecting to what Clay was mentioning just then, and also looking at your video earlier, very beautiful storytelling. Could you tell us a bit more about the importance of storytelling and involving the sensory experience in promoting chocolates and connecting consumers with producer communities? I think you have a lot of experience there.
Indeed, I think it's absolutely critical because you want people to make connections with other people around the world. And if it's just a faceless corporation who are producing tons and tons of chocolate, which is often hugely adulterated with a lot of sugar and fat and things that are not necessarily very healthy, we want people to have a completely different experience. And we don't just want to tell a story to people far across the world away from the cocoa. We want them to feel an empathy and a connection with the cocoa farmers. And interestingly, somewhere like Indonesia, you know, you have this huge young population, very educated. You're saying they're moving away from agriculture, but at the same time, they're saying now this is possibly a great new opportunity. And I think coming through the pandemic, people are beginning to appreciate their roots and the culture and agriculture and connecting back to the earth much, much more. And I feel this is a critical one as well. And the story of the chocolate coming on a sailboat from Grenada, this was one of the great missions of the founder, the late Mott Green, who always found that little last bit of the journey of the chocolate, which had been produced all the way from tree to bar in Grenada on the tiny island, is now being shipped on an airplane. He found that a little bit hard to swallow. So to be able to ship it using the wind as the only resource which would take it across the ocean was this absolute dream. And it's happened a few times. And we're really proud to have the support of Fortnum and Mason and a small bean to bar company in Northern Ireland to help actually bring this to fruition. So that was a really exciting moment. And I hope that we will be doing it again at some point in the not too distant future.
Indeed, that's really beautiful storytelling, Chantal. But Tissa, Chantal and Clay mentioned earlier about the domestic market and also the pandemic. Now, being the only Indonesian chocolate business owner on this panel, how does the domestic market demand for Indonesian chocolates look like? And how was this affected by the pandemic?
Yeah, right. So the demand here is growing for the last, I think, 4 to 5 years. And specifically, our growth in Pipiltin is approximately 25 to 30% during the past 2 years, the pandemic. So I can say that the trend is here, is here. But we as chocolate players need to find relevance to the market. And here in Indonesia, we don't really have the culture of eating chocolate bars. So we need to diversify our products from chocolate bars to chocolate snacks, chocolate drinks. So now we have a big demand in cocoa drinks, but there is a growing demand in dark chocolate, but the consumers, for healthy reasons, but the market is still very niche. And how it affected during the pandemic, when the pandemic started, we have a decreasing in sales for about, I think, 60%, because we are focused on offline markets. So we have stores in Indonesia, Bali, and we also export to 5 countries. But mostly we focus on our online channels. But we are lucky to have switched our focus to offline. And now in our second year during the pandemic, there's an increase again, as I mentioned, about 30%. So I think it's very interesting, because I think it's really relates to also an issue of mental health. Whereas when there's a lot of pressure during the pandemic, there's a lot of changes, and people can find some sort of affordable luxury of eating chocolate. So I think it's a way of like finding an instant way of happiness, like to make us happy. So also it's also a very good angle. But talking about single origin chocolate, again, the market is still very niche here.
Thank you, Mbak Tissa. Now, while we're on it, I mentioned at the beginning of this session that the interest of the younger generations are a bit declining, especially entering agriculture. Right. Now, how do you think millennials in Indonesia can seize the opportunity to develop cocoa and chocolate business opportunities?
Right. I think first they need to see that the chocolate business is sexy. It's like being farmer is cool. Because you usually hear like being farmer is, it's very outdated, and so we need to build the awareness. So we need more role model, and again, building an awareness on the importance of this issue, because this is the future of chocolate. So for example, here in Pipiltin, we're working with this one cocoa farmers from Bali. So they're a family. And the son of the farmer is he's taking now graduate study in food science, and the bachelor degree is agriculture. And then he still decided to be a farmer. So we need to find more and more young farmers like this to make them a role model and to building awareness to surround our area, our community for the importance of this issue, because again, this is the future of chocolate. We need young farmers more than ever right now.
Absolutely agree, Mbak Tissa. Chantal, you started your own chocolate business from a very young age. Could you share your experience and tell us a bit more about the personal drive to initiate the business, and what lessons do you think can young and inspiring entrepreneurs in Indonesia take away from your own experience?
Well, it was so long ago. It was last century, and things have changed so dramatically. I knew absolutely nothing about chocolate. I came from an art and design background. What I knew was I was really, really passionate about chocolate. I loved eating it. I loved to see what happened when you give people chocolate as a gift and how excited that they got. And in the UK at that time, the only people selling really high quality chocolate was in another sort of territory of kind of snobbery and inaccessibility, that they were not embracing the customer experience. If anything, they were slamming doors in people's faces. And I thought, there's something wonderful and magical here. And I want to share it with people. I want people to feel good about eating chocolate and to create a theatrical and beautiful experience, an interactive experience. So perhaps I was a little ahead of my time on that side, but the real change was when I actually met the cocoa farmers, and I traveled to, I've seen cocoa growing in quite a few places, but the one that really got to me was Grenada, partly because of the massive inspiration of the founders and the fact that they were making such fantastic quality chocolate right there on the ground. So for me, that connecting back to the roots was a pivotal thing which transformed my business and my own personal life.
Very interesting, Chantal. Clay, now you personally consider chocolate as an avenue for learning and educating others. In your opinion, how can Indonesian millennials build their confidence to develop a living from chocolate and the cocoa sector in general?
Well, one of the things that I hear from both Tissa and Chantal, and I think I've touched on it a little bit, is that chocolate can be used to make connections, right? But chocolate is unlike a lot of other things in that you give it to people and there are hardly anybody who doesn't like it, right? And you give it to people and they put it in their mouth and it puts a smile on their face. And so chocolate makes people happy. I talk to people and they say, what do you do? And I say, well, I write about chocolate, right? And they go, ooh, they're instantly, their eyes light up and, tell me more. And so it begins, it creates an opening for me to say, like Chantal, my background is as a fine artist. I have a bachelor's degree in photography, which I got in the previous century. And what I do is I use that artistic lens, what it is that I learned at art school, to take a look at the world of chocolate around me and to be able to say, in essence, in some ways, how might an artist, someone who's not a farmer, someone who's not a chocolate maker, someone who is not intimately involved day to day with production, how can I learn about cocoa and chocolate and then find ways to, when I understand what people are interested in, to be able to connect with them and to make stories and to tell them stories that will get them as interested and excited about cocoa and chocolate as I am. Now, I am not a physicist. I am not a chemist. I'm not an economist. I'm not an agronomist. I am not a botanist. I am not a geneticist, right? But I get to study these things. And I've learned a lot about these subjects from the perspective of cocoa and chocolate. And if there's nothing else that I do, right, I get to share my excitement for what it is that I've learned and what the opportunities are. And I think that, there's an opportunity here, speaking to what both Tissa and Chantal have said and the questions that you've asked, is that when people think about cocoa farmers, they think about a very traditional, very conventional approach to farming. And there is something between that, right, model, which is hundreds, if not thousands of years old, and big factory farming, which I don't think anybody in the cocoa world, except for the very large companies, is interested in. But there's an opportunity to reimagine what farming looks like. The technologies that are involved, the techniques. Yeah, go to school, learn food science, learn to become an agronomist, come back in and transform the way you're producing the cocoa. Learn a bit about microbiology and understand about fermentation. How do I do that? And then work with like-minded people who have complementary sets of skills, right? So you don't have to do everything. You can do everything if you want, right? But you don't have to do everything. And that there is, in not only local and regional and global collaborations, as a chocolate maker, just relies on her farmers, right? As the farmers, they rely on her as chocolate makers. In Grenada, same thing, right? These are mutually interdependent communities, and that through these collaborations, we have an opportunity not only to change our own lives, change the lives of the people who we work with, and then to be able to change the attitudes, at least, if not the lives, of the people who eat the chocolate that we make. And I think that's where the opportunity lies, is finding those connections, finding those collaborations, finding ways to challenge the status quo and reimagine what it means to be a farmer, reimagine what it means to be a chocolate maker, the communities that I live in, and how we thrive as communities.
So Chantal, when we talk about sustainability in chocolates, do you have any stories from the ground that you feel that would be very relevant to the sustainability of fine chocolates in the future?
I do. I mean, I know globally a lot of virgin rainforest has been cut down in order to plant cocoa. And that short-term approach is really unsustainable. And often after about 5 or 10 years, the trees are not really producing very much, and the land has already been robbed of all its nutrients and the sort of ecosystems which would support a fantastic cocoa farm if it had been planted in a managed way within some rainforest. So I feel the organic model is the closest one to helping that, which is looking at sustaining the ecosystems, planting other crops like leguminous beans and things which will keep the nitrogen in the soil, they keep the fertility. There'll be lots of other small insects and animals living around, and bird life, and the farmers will be able to actually grow foodstuffs that they can also eat from the land. So I think it's really important that the land is protected, it's drained correctly, so it's much more resilient when it comes to adverse weather conditions, which we all know are happening more and more all the time. So for me, the organic model and this managed rainforest model is the way forward.
Thank you, Chantal. And Clay, would you like to add this?
Well, Chantal mentioned, I think, one of the key words that we need to be thinking about is we need to be thinking about resilience. Right? So resilience is key. And she also mentioned monocropping. I personally believe that monocultures of ideas is just as bad as monocropping. If we all think about things the same way, we all believe the same things, there is only one way to solve this problem. That's just like planting a monoculture of a crop, only one variety of soybeans, for example, or only one variety of banana. We end up with something that is fragile and can easily be toppled by forces that we may not imagine what they are right now. Right? And so it's very, very important that we approach this, as I mentioned, reimagining of farming. Right? So yes, we tend to think of farming a particular kind of way, cocoa farming a particular kind of way. But there is an opportunity here to be thinking perhaps generationally. So we're thinking about our children, our children's children. we're thinking not only about the fertility of the land, but the productivity of the trees, the health of pollinators, which are key to cocoa, the other animals which depend upon and which the cocoa forestry system supports, the communities in which everybody lives. I mean, these all need to be considered as part of building resilience into the system. And that is, I think, one of the most exciting opportunities that this time and this place have opened up in front of us. And I think the people who are going to be most successful, happiest, are going to be the people who you jump into that opportunity and say, yeah, I can see how I can make it work for me, for my family, for my communities, and for the animals yet to be discovered, the plant species yet to be discovered accidentally. I mean, they're all out there. We're just not looking for them. And this using chocolate as a vehicle, using cocoa and chocolate as a vehicle for discovery, not just internally, not just self-discovery, but of the world around us. I mean, this is the thing that, how do I put that into words? What does it sound like? What do pictures look like? How do I communicate this to people? I mean, these are the things which are the animating factors for me in all of this.
But Tissa, are there any specific lessons from Indonesia that you feel is very important for the future of cocoa sustainability?
Yeah, just like Clay said earlier, like how we communicate our message, our storytelling to the market, it's like the most crucial thing for us now. We're talking about sustainability in the long run, but again, if there's no people buying the chocolate, like an ethic chocolate, then it's what else that we can do. So it's very important to convey our message to the customers, again, because if we say that we care about sustainability, we source the chocolate directly from these farmers, but it doesn't have relevance to the customers. And I just want to eat good chocolate, they said. For example, our customers buy the West Papua Ransiki chocolate. The main reason for them buying the chocolate, not because of the story of the sustainability and the deforestation, how we manage the deforestation, but again, the flavor. They love the flavor, they love the packaging, and that's the main reason. So how to convey the message to the customers is our biggest challenges right now, I think.
Thank you, Mbak Tissa. Maybe because we still have 10 minutes, maybe just to pop in one question. All three of you have quite extensive experience already seeing different examples around the world of how fine chocolate has been promoted and marketed. Could you perhaps provide some of the most creative and innovative examples of how fine chocolate was marketed? And you think this could be something that here in Indonesia, we could also try to develop based on those examples? Maybe Chantal?
I've seen many things. But I think actually the other thing which is important to think about is we're in a really young industry in terms of chocolate making. It's really only like 150 years old that people have been making chocolate in the way that we would recognize it now. So I've seen people making products like vinegar from the fermenting fruit, which drains off the cocoa. There's all sorts of fresh products which are being made, which are things like the juice, which is really delicious. And I think Clay has also been experimenting with some alcohols and which come from the same juices. So I think there's a huge area of innovation which is just waiting to be discovered. And since we have so many amazing young millennials, especially in Indonesia, and some brilliant minds, I think the possibilities in the future are just absolutely enormous.
Thank you, Chantal. Clay, do you have any quirky examples that you can share with us?
I think it's, I think that it's questioning, which I think Chantal pointed to, which is most exciting to me. I mean, the question is, why does chocolate always have to be brown? why do we have to take cocoa beans and convert them into chocolate? We don't have to. It's just what we've been doing for the last several thousands of years. We've been taking the beans, we've been cooking them mostly, we've been grinding them up, and we've been turning that into stuff. And we've been focused on brown because that's the oxidation color, that's the roasting color. But we don't have to do these things. Cocoa as an ingredient, going all the way back to the pod, fresh off the tree. What can we do with that? What can we do with the juice? As Chantal mentioned, I was working on a project where we were collecting the fresh juice and then fermenting it and then distilling that into an 80 proof spirit. That is, okay in some cultures, not okay in other cultures. But it represents, can we take what is normally considered to be a waste product and can we turn it into a revenue generating theme? But I do have to go back and, put a pin in what Tissa was saying, which is ultimately people are going to be convinced by the flavor of what you're doing. They're going to buy it the first time, maybe because they like the packaging, maybe because they like some of the messaging, maybe because they're recommended by a friend. But then the second time they're going to buy it is because probably they like the flavor. And if there is a secondary motivation, it's going to be because there's something about the business of the company that they feel good about supporting. Right. And but the long-term continued purchasing, and I think that you need to get somebody to purchase something at least the third time. You're successful if you can get that third purchase, is that ultimately it's all about flavors that they like. And so from a chocolate maker perspective, it's really important to make chocolate that you're proud of and that you feel good about. But it's also really, really important to think about the chocolate that you make in terms about, what do my customers want? It's like, for example, as a chocolate maker, if you're not making something that a 6-year-old wants to eat, well, you should be making product that 6-year-olds want to eat because they're customers too, and they like chocolate, and they can be big customers for you, and they will influence their parents in terms of the decisions that they make. And so while chocolate making is very personal, as is writing, as is painting, as is photography, as is music making, as any one of the visual or performing or other creative arts, chocolate is an intensely personal artistic expression. Right? It is possible to make art that other people want to eat without compromising our integrity as artists. Right? And so recognizing that tension, right, that what we're doing is we're making things that people want to put in their mouth because it makes them happy, right? Because they feel good. They like the way it tastes. They like the way it melts in their mouth. I mean, these are the sorts of things that I think are the things that should be a part of every chocolate maker's thinking about what it is they're doing and why it is that they're doing it. Yeah, it's for me, but I'm doing this to spread joy, right? to everyone in the world who shares what it is that I'm making for them, which makes it like a lot of other food products in the world, but special because it's chocolate.
Thank you, Clay. But Tissa, I've attended your chocolate and tea pairing. I know that you've developed quite a few different ways to enjoy chocolates innovatively with music, with other avenues. Could you tell us a bit more about these creative marketing techniques with your chocolate products?
Yeah, Melati. The event before it was a chocolate and tea pairing session, yeah, and we mix it also with vegetarian food. It was interesting, but again, we did it to attract our customers, to test the market, whether it's relevant for them, whether it attract them enough. So we do make a chocolate tasting session, and we also made like a sonic seasoning. So there's a study from Oxford University, this sonic seasoning, when you hear like high-pitched sound, you can really taste the sweetness of the chocolate, and whereas you hear the low sound, more like a bitterness comes out from the chocolate. And we test this in our market in Japan, because we export to Japan since 4 years ago. So we did the event there, and it was quite surprising that they can really differentiate the taste of the chocolate, and it's the same chocolate but with different sound. So yeah, we did that kind of experiment to see whether it's too much, whether they really want us to go that far, or they just really the customers really want us to just to convey the flavors or different flavors of Bali, of Aceh, of West Papua, and all of the regions. Again, as just like Clay and Chantal said, that the relevancy to the market is again very important. So we really need to see that. For example, just like Clay said, if the 6 years old need a lollipop, chocolate lollipop, then we have to provide it, in a way that we can provide. For example, from Pipiltin, we can make like a dark and milk chocolate lollipop for kids, so they can taste the sweetness of milk chocolate, but the darkness and the other side, to educate their palate, something like that. So again, it's very important to find relevance to the market.
Thank you, Mbak Tissa. Chantal, Clay, Mbak Tissa, thank you so much. This has been an eye-opening discussion today for me. I hope our viewers also find it insightful, and it may catalyze and inspire some, if not many, Indonesian millennials out there to explore their passion in doing business, maybe in agriculture or cocoa, and developing the local chocolate scene to take it to the global stage. On behalf of Jakarta Content Week, I, Melati, would like to express my heartfelt appreciation to our speakers and each and every member of the audience for your participation. Thank you for supporting LitBite, and to our loyal partners who made Jack Tent possible. There are many more interesting events to watch. Join them via Jack Tent's website, www.jacktent.com. Please follow Jack Tent on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for any updates. Stay safe and see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Chantal, Clay, Mbak Tissa.
I'm looking
Bye.
forward.
Thank
I'm
you.
looking forward more than ever to coming to Indonesia.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoy the session of Sarina Jakarta Content Week 2021, sponsored by Brimo.
Saat gagasan pendirian Sarinah dicetuskan pada tahun 1962, Bung Karno ingin banyak membuat mercusuar kebangkitan bangsa Indonesia. Sarinah adalah bentuk perwujudan dari kebangkitan ekonomi kerakyatan menuju modernisasi dan internasionalisme. Dari masa ke masa, Sarinah menjadi saksi dari perkembangan Indonesia. Sarinah melihat bagaimana masyarakat bertumbuh dan beradaptasi melalui segala tantangan yang hadir. Sarinah terus menjadi sentra aktivitas bagi masyarakat untuk memasarkan inovasi dan produk dalam negeri di jantung ibu kota. Transformasi Sarinah adalah sebuah momen yang dinanti-nantikan masyarakat Indonesia. Sebuah pusat perbelanjaan yang didesain untuk memberikan ruang bagi produk dalam negeri yang telah dikurasi. Pemugaran gedungnya tetap menjaga kelestarian aspek cagar budayanya, namun interior, fasilitas, dan pengalaman berbelanja akan disesuaikan dengan perilaku konsumen masa kini dan masa depan. Sarinah diharapkan menjadi destinasi wajib kunjung bagi wisatawan dalam dan luar negeri. Ruang rumah Sarinah terbagi menjadi 8 buah segmen lantai. Masing-masing ruang tersebut kami beri nama antara lain Pasar Nusantara, Pusaka, Untayan, Kreasi, Hayat, House of Sarinah, Cakrawala, dan Tanah Nusa. Melalui konsep community mall, Sarinah memberikan ruang publik yang memiliki elemen historical, urban linkages, urban forest, serta urban living. Kami ingin mengajak Anda untuk menjadi bagian dari semangat baru Sarinah. Semangat yang diwariskan oleh para pendiri bangsa untuk bisa menjadikan Indonesia menjadi salah satu sentral ekonomi dunia. Bersama, mari kita tunjukkan kekayaan karya Nusantara kepada dunia. Sarinah, panggung karya Indonesia.